Your married soulmate's biggest secret is about to be exposed. Don't skip. Listen carefully. The story began on a quiet morning that seemed no different from countless mornings before. Golden sunlight slowly filtered through the curtains, filling the room with warmth. A cool breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of fresh rain and blooming flowers. Birds welcomed the sunrise with cheerful songs. The neighborhood slowly came to life. A small bakery opened its doors, filling the street with the comforting aroma of warm bread. Children laughed as they walked to school. Neighbors waved as they watered their gardens. Everything appeared wonderfully ordinary. Yet somewhere, someone carried a burden that had quietly grown heavier with every passing day. Not because they had committed some terrible wrongdoing. Not because they were hiding a dramatic betrayal. But because they had hidden something far more common. Their true feelings. Because your heart needs this right now, because many people silently carry emotions they struggle to express. For years, they believed keeping everything inside was the responsible thing to do. Whenever they felt overwhelmed, they stayed quiet. Whenever they wanted to say, "I'm hurting," they smiled instead. Whenever they wanted to admit they were afraid, they convinced themselves they would deal with it later. Little by little, silence became a habit. Then that habit became a burden. The weight wasn't created by one terrible event. It was created by thousands of unspoken moments. Because your heart needs this right now, because honest communication often prevents small burdens from becoming heavy ones. That morning, they prepared a simple breakfast. A warm cup of tea rested beside the window. Instead of rushing through another busy day, they simply watched life unfold. An elderly couple walked hand in hand beneath the trees. A father patiently helped his daughter zip her school jacket. A young man paused to help an elderly neighbor carry groceries. Tiny moments. Simple kindnesses. Nothing dramatic. Yet everyone quietly reminded them of something important. Love is rarely demonstrated through extraordinary speeches. It is revealed through ordinary faithfulness. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting relationships are built through everyday care. After breakfast, they reached for an old notebook resting quietly on a nearby table. Its cover had become worn with time. Inside were years of handwritten reflections. Dreams. Prayers. Mistakes. Lessons. Moments of gratitude. Turning each page felt like visiting different chapters of life. Some pages reflected youthful confidence. Others revealed seasons of uncertainty. Several contained painful questions that had once seemed impossible to answer. Now they looked different. Time had transformed many old fears into valuable lessons. Because your heart needs this right now, because experience often reveals wisdom we could not see before. They opened to a blank page. For several moments they simply stared at it. Then they slowly wrote. What is the biggest secret I have been hiding? The room became still. They expected complicated answers. Instead, a single sentence quietly appeared. I have been pretending to be stronger than I really feel. They paused. Another sentence followed. I have been afraid that honesty would make me look weak. Reading those words filled them with unexpected emotion. Not because they solved every problem, but because truth had finally been spoken. Even if only on paper. Because your heart needs this right now, because healing often begins with honesty toward ourselves. Later that morning, they decided to visit their favorite park. Towering oak trees stretched toward the clear blue sky. Gentle breezes moved softly through the branches. The peaceful lake reflected drifting white clouds. Families gathered beneath shady trees. Children chased butterflies through colorful gardens. Everything invited them to slow down. They found a familiar wooden bench overlooking the water. Instead of reaching for distractions, they simply sat quietly. Because your heart needs this right now, because stillness often helps us hear the thoughts we have been avoiding. Nearby, a little girl was building a sandcastle with her grandfather. Every few minutes, gentle waves washed away part of their work. The little girl sighed. It keeps falling apart. Her grandfather smiled kindly. So we build it again. She looked puzzled. Why? He gently replied. Because some things become stronger each time we patiently rebuild them. Those simple words echoed deeply. Relationships often work the same way. Trust sometimes needs rebuilding. Understanding sometimes needs rebuilding. Hope sometimes needs rebuilding. But rebuilding is possible. Because your heart needs this right now, because patience often restores what frustration would abandon. As the morning slowly became afternoon, they wandered through a nearby flower garden. An elderly gardener carefully removed weeds growing between beautiful roses. Curious, they asked, "Why spend so much time removing such tiny weeds?" The gardener smiled warmly. Because ignored problems rarely stay small. Those words lingered. The same is true for emotions. Unspoken disappointment. Unexpressed gratitude. Hidden fears. Left alone, they quietly grow. Honest conversations often remove those weeds before they overtake the garden. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy relationships require regular care. The afternoon passed peacefully. A violinist played gentle music beneath a large maple tree. Only a handful of people stopped to listen. Still, every note was played with care. Watching him reminded them that meaningful things remain valuable even when unnoticed. Kindness. Patience. Honesty. Forgiveness. These qualities don't require applause to matter. Because your heart needs this right now, because character is formed through quiet choices. Returning to the bench beside the lake, they opened the notebook once again. Today's page filled quickly. Today I discovered that my biggest secret isn't something dramatic. It is that I have been carrying too much alone. I believed asking for understanding would make me appear weak. Now I understand that vulnerability often creates stronger connections. Reading those words brought a peaceful smile. The burden felt lighter. Not because life had suddenly become easier, but because pretending had finally ended. Because your heart needs this right now, because authenticity creates room for genuine connection. As afternoon slowly became evening, golden sunlight reflected across the calm lake. Families folded picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Birds returned to their nests. Everything gradually became quiet. Standing beside the water, they reflected on the title of this story. Your married soulmate's biggest secret is about to be exposed. They smiled softly. The greatest secret wasn't a shocking revelation. It wasn't a hidden betrayal. It wasn't a sensational mystery. It was the quiet realization that many people long to be understood, yet fear being vulnerable. The real breakthrough came when they chose honesty instead of hiding. Because your heart needs this right now, because truthful conversations often strengthen relationships more than perfect appearances ever could. That evening, they returned home. The room felt peaceful. Outside, countless stars slowly appeared across the night sky. They opened the notebook one final time before bed. Across a fresh page they carefully wrote, "Tomorrow I will choose honesty over pretending. Tomorrow I will listen with patience. Tomorrow I will express appreciation more freely. Tomorrow I will ask for understanding instead of assuming others already know how I feel. Tomorrow I will continue becoming someone who builds relationships through trust, compassion, and sincerity." Then they paused before writing one final reflection. Today I discovered that the greatest secrets are often the feelings we hide from the people we love. Real strength is not pretending everything is fine. Real strength is speaking honestly with kindness, listening with humility, and allowing trust to grow through openness. That journey may not be easy, but it is always worth beginning. They gently closed the notebook. Outside, the stars continued shining. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities would appear. New lessons would quietly unfold. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared the truth. Because they had learned that honesty, offered with compassion, is not something to fear, it is often the first step toward healing. And listen to this. The next morning arrived with the same gentle sunrise that had greeted countless mornings before. Golden light slowly spilled across the room. A cool breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of fresh rain and blooming flowers. Birds welcomed the day with cheerful songs. Outside, life continued as it always had. The neighborhood bakery filled the street with the aroma of warm bread. Children laughed on their way to school. Neighbors waved while watering flowers. Everything looked wonderfully ordinary. Yet inside one heart, something extraordinary had begun. The burden that had once felt impossible to carry no longer seemed impossible to face. Because your heart needs this right now, because healing often begins the moment we stop running from the truth. They reached for the familiar notebook resting beside the window. Before writing anything new, they quietly reread yesterday's final entry. My greatest secret isn't something shocking. It's the fear of letting people see the real me. They stared at those words for a long moment. Then slowly smiled. The sentence no longer felt frightening. It felt freeing. Because your heart needs this right now, because honesty often removes burdens that silence only makes heavier. After breakfast they decided to return to the peaceful park. The old oak tree stood proudly beside the calm lake. Gentle breezes moved through its branches. Sunlight danced across the water. Families spread picnic blankets beneath the shade. Children chased butterflies through colorful gardens. Everything invited them to slow down. Finding the familiar wooden bench, they quietly sat down. For the first time in many weeks. They weren't searching for dramatic answers. They were simply learning how to be present. Because your heart needs this right now, because peace is often found in ordinary moments we usually overlook. Nearby, an elderly couple quietly shared breakfast together. They didn't speak much. Occasionally they smiled. Sometimes they simply watched the lake. After several peaceful minutes, the husband gently reached for his wife's hand. "I still enjoy mornings with you," he said softly. She smiled. "I still enjoy them too." Nothing dramatic. No elaborate speech. Just quiet appreciation. Watching them reminded the person that love often survives because people continue expressing gratitude for ordinary moments. Because your heart needs this right now, because appreciation keeps relationships alive. As they continued walking, they noticed a small bridge crossing a gentle stream. An elderly carpenter carefully repaired one of the wooden railings. Curious, they stopped to watch. "Doesn't it take a long time to repair something this old?" they asked. The carpenter smiled warmly. "It does. But replacing everything is easier than restoring it. I restore it because some things are worth preserving." Those words echoed deeply. Relationships often require restoration. Trust may need rebuilding. Understanding may need renewing. Patience may need practicing again. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting relationships are maintained through continual care. The morning slowly became afternoon. Walking beside the lake, they noticed a father teaching his young son how to skip stones across the water. The first stone sank immediately. The second skipped once. The third skipped twice. The little boy laughed with excitement. "I did it." His father smiled proudly. "Every attempt taught you something." Those words quietly settled into their heart. Healthy communication works the same way. Not every conversation goes perfectly. Not every apology sounds flawless. But every sincere effort teaches us how to love better. Because your heart needs this right now, because growth comes through practice, not perfection. Later they wandered through the flower garden. Rows of colorful roses stretched beneath the afternoon sun. An elderly gardener carefully removed dried leaves from healthy plants. Curious, they asked, "Why remove leaves that have already fallen?" The gardener smiled kindly. "So new growth has room." Those simple words lingered. Sometimes old resentment needs to be released. Old misunderstandings need to be forgiven. Old fears need to be replaced with hope. Because your heart needs this right now, because letting go creates space for healing. Returning to the wooden bench, they opened the notebook once more. Today's page remained blank only briefly. Then the words began flowing naturally. Today I realized something. The secret I carried was never meant to remain hidden forever. It wasn't protecting me. It was preventing me from experiencing deeper trust. Real relationships require honesty. Not perfect honesty. Compassionate honesty. Reading those words brought a peaceful smile. They felt lighter than they had in a long time. Because your heart needs this right now, because truth shared with kindness creates stronger connections. The afternoon breeze carried the gentle sound of music from a violinist beneath a maple tree. Only a few people paused to listen. Still, every note was played beautifully. Watching him reminded them that meaningful things don't lose value simply because they happen quietly. Forgiveness works quietly. Patience works quietly. Kindness works quietly. Trust grows quietly. Yet their influence reaches farther than we often realize. Because your heart needs this right now, because quiet acts of love often leave lasting memories. As afternoon slowly became evening, the golden sunset reflected across the peaceful lake. Families packed picnic baskets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Birds returned to their nests. Everything gradually became still. Standing beside the water, they reflected on the title of this story. Your married soulmate's biggest secret is about to be exposed. A gentle smile crossed their face. The real secret wasn't a hidden scandal. It wasn't a shocking confession. It wasn't something meant to create fear. The greatest secret was discovering how many people quietly long to be understood while believing they must hide their true feelings. That realization changed everything. Because your heart needs this right now, because vulnerability often creates deeper understanding than perfect appearances ever could. As evening settled across the neighborhood, they returned home. The room felt peaceful. Outside, countless stars slowly appeared across the night sky. The notebook rested quietly on the table. Opening it one final time before bed, they carefully wrote, "Tomorrow I will choose openness instead of pretending. Tomorrow I will express appreciation more often. Tomorrow I will listen with greater patience. Tomorrow I will forgive more quickly. Tomorrow I will continue becoming someone who values truth spoken with compassion." They paused before writing one final reflection. Today I discovered that the greatest burden was never the truth itself. The greatest burden was believing I had to carry it alone. Honest conversations may feel uncomfortable at first, but they often become the doorway to deeper trust, stronger relationships, and lasting peace. I cannot control how every conversation ends, but I can choose to approach each one with humility, kindness, and integrity. They gently closed the notebook. Outside, the stars continued shining. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities would appear. New lessons would quietly unfold. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared the truth. Because they had learned that authentic relationships are not strengthened by perfect appearances. They are strengthened by honesty, compassion, patience, forgiveness, and the courage to let another person truly know your heart. And listen to this. Several peaceful mornings had passed since the truth was finally acknowledged. Nothing extraordinary had happened. There were no dramatic confrontations. No unbelievable revelations. No miraculous signs. Instead, life continued with its familiar rhythm. The sun still rose above the horizon. Birds still welcomed the morning with cheerful songs. The neighborhood bakery still filled the streets with the comforting aroma of fresh bread. Children still hurried to school with bright smiles. Everything looked exactly the same. Yet inside, everything had quietly changed. The burden of pretending had begun to disappear. Because your heart needs this right now, because genuine healing often begins long before anyone else notices. That morning, they prepared breakfast without rushing. A warm cup of tea rested beside the window. For the first time in years, they allowed themselves to simply sit in silence. Not the silence of fear. Not the silence of avoidance. But the peaceful silence that follows honesty. Outside, a gentle breeze moved through the trees. Sunlight shimmered across dew-covered grass. A neighbor smiled while watering colorful flowers. Tiny moments. Simple blessings. They suddenly realized how many beautiful things they had overlooked while carrying invisible emotional weight. Because your heart needs this right now, because gratitude becomes easier when we stop carrying unnecessary burdens. After breakfast, they reached once again for the familiar notebook. Its pages had become more than paper. They had become a record of transformation. The earliest entries were filled with questions. Later pages revealed difficult lessons. Recent pages overflowed with gratitude and quiet courage. Turning through them reminded them that growth never happened overnight. It happened through one honest choice after another. One apology. One prayer. One act of kindness. One conversation. One decision to keep moving forward. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting change is built through consistent daily choices. Opening to a fresh page, they slowly wrote. Today I choose peace. They paused. Another sentence quietly appeared. Not because life has become perfect, but because I no longer want fear to control my heart. Reading those words brought unexpected comfort. For years they believed peace would arrive only after every problem disappeared. Now they understood something different. Peace often begins while challenges still exist. Because your heart needs this right now, because peace comes from the way we respond to life, not only from our circumstances. Later that morning, they returned to the familiar park. The old oak tree still stood proudly beside the peaceful lake. Its branches stretched confidently toward the clear blue sky. Gentle breezes danced through the leaves. Families gathered beneath shady trees. Children laughed while feeding ducks. Everything invited reflection. For several minutes they simply watched gentle ripples move across the lake. No rushing. No worrying. Only gratitude. Because your heart needs this right now, because stillness often helps us recognize how much we have already overcome. Nearby, An elderly woman patiently taught her granddaughter how to bake bread using a small outdoor oven during a community gathering. The child became discouraged after dropping flour onto the ground. "I'm making a mess," she sighed. The grandmother smiled warmly. "Every loaf begins with scattered flour. The important thing is that you keep learning." Those words settled gently into their heart. Relationships are often like homemade bread. They require patience, care, time, gentle hands, and the willingness to begin again after mistakes. Because your heart needs this right now, because love grows stronger through patience rather than perfection. The morning slowly became afternoon. Walking beside the lake, they noticed a young father teaching his son how to repair an old bicycle. The child tightened one bolt too much. Another became loose. Instead of becoming frustrated, the father laughed softly. "We'll fix it together." Watching them reminded them of something they had almost forgotten. Healthy relationships are not built by people who never make mistakes. They are built by people willing to solve problems together. Because your heart needs this right now, because teamwork strengthens relationships far more than blame ever could. As they continued walking, they entered the familiar flower garden. Rows of roses, lilies, and sunflowers bloomed beneath the warm afternoon sun. An elderly gardener carefully watered each plant. Curious, they asked, "Do flowers ever bloom exactly the same way?" The gardener smiled kindly. "No. Each one grows differently. But every one deserves care." Those simple words echoed inside. People are much the same. Everyone heals differently. Everyone communicates differently. Everyone carries unseen struggles. Kindness makes room for those differences. Because your heart needs this right now, because understanding grows when we respect another person's journey. Returning to the wooden bench, they opened the notebook again. The blank page slowly filled. "Today I understand something important. The biggest secret was never hidden from another person. It was hidden behind my own fear. I thought pretending would protect me. Instead, honesty brought freedom. Kindness brought healing. Forgiveness brought peace." Reading those words filled them with quiet joy. Not excitement. Not relief alone. Something deeper. Confidence. Because your heart needs this right now, because confidence grows when we begin living honestly. The afternoon breeze carried soft music from a violinist beneath a nearby tree. Only a handful of people stopped to listen. Still, every melody was played with care. Watching him reminded them that beautiful things rarely need loud attention to have lasting impact. Patience works quietly. Trust grows quietly. Compassion works quietly. Forgiveness works quietly. Yet together they transform lives. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest influences are often the quietest ones. As afternoon slowly became evening, golden sunlight reflected across the peaceful lake. Families packed picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Birds returned to their nests. Everything gradually became still. Standing beside the water, they reflected on the title of this story. Your married soulmate's biggest secret is about to be exposed. They smiled softly. The greatest secret had never been a dramatic scandal. It wasn't hidden betrayal. It wasn't an unbelievable mystery. The deepest secret was how many people quietly long to be understood while believing they must hide their fears. The greatest revelation came when someone finally chose honesty over appearances. Because your heart needs this right now, because authentic relationships grow through openness rather than perfection. That evening they returned home. The room felt peaceful. Outside, countless stars slowly filled the night sky. They opened the notebook one final time before bed. Across a fresh page they carefully wrote, "Tomorrow I will continue choosing honesty. Tomorrow I will continue choosing patience. Tomorrow I will continue choosing compassion. Tomorrow I will continue choosing gratitude. Tomorrow I will continue becoming someone who builds trust through everyday actions." They paused before writing one final reflection. "Today I learned that true strength isn't found in hiding emotions or pretending everything is fine. True strength is found in speaking with kindness, listening with humility, forgiving generously, and allowing others to know the real person behind the smile." Those choices may seem small, but they become the foundation of every healthy relationship. They gently closed the notebook. Outside, the stars continued shining. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities would appear. New lessons would quietly unfold. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared what honesty might reveal. Because they had discovered that truth, shared with compassion, doesn't destroy meaningful relationships. It gives them the opportunity to become stronger. And listen to this. The final morning arrived with a quiet beauty that felt different from all the mornings before it. The first rays of sunlight gently slipped through the curtains, filling the room with soft golden light. A cool breeze drifted through the open window carrying the scent of fresh rain and blooming flowers. Birds welcomed the sunrise with joyful songs. Outside, the neighborhood slowly awakened. A baker arranged warm bread inside a small shop. Neighbors smiled as they greeted one another. Children laughed while walking toward school. Everything appeared wonderfully ordinary. Yet inside one heart, something extraordinary had finally happened. The burden that had been carried for so long no longer felt impossible to bear. Not because every problem had disappeared. Not because every question had been answered. But because truth had finally replaced fear. Because your heart needs this right now, because peace often begins when honesty becomes stronger than anxiety. That morning they prepared breakfast slowly. There was no rush. No pressure. Only gratitude. A warm cup of tea rested beside the window. As they watched the sunrise spread across the trees, they realized how many beautiful mornings had passed unnoticed while they had been trapped inside worry. The gentle breeze. The songs of birds. The laughter of children. The quiet rhythm of ordinary life. None of those things had changed. Only the heart observing them had changed. Because your heart needs this right now, because gratitude often transforms ordinary moments into extraordinary memories. After breakfast they reached for the familiar notebook one final time. Its cover had become worn from weeks of daily reflection. Every page carried another lesson. Some pages contained questions. Others held prayers. Many recorded moments of growth. Turning through those pages felt like meeting different versions of themselves. The fearful version. The uncertain version. The hopeful version. The growing version. And finally, the peaceful version. They smiled gently. The notebook had never predicted the future. Instead, it had quietly recorded the transformation of one honest heart. Because your heart needs this right now, because personal growth is one of life's greatest victories. Only one blank page remained. For several moments they simply stared at it. Then they slowly began writing. Today I understand something I once feared. Honesty doesn't destroy real love. It strengthens it. Vulnerability doesn't make me weak. It allows trust to grow. Forgiveness doesn't erase wisdom. It allows peace to replace bitterness. Reading those words filled them with quiet joy. Not excitement. Not relief alone. A deeper confidence. Because your heart needs this right now, because authentic strength grows when we live according to our values. Later that morning they returned once more to the familiar park. The old oak tree still stretched confidently toward the bright blue sky. Gentle breezes danced through its branches. Sunlight shimmered across the peaceful lake. Families gathered beneath shady trees. Children laughed while feeding ducks. Everything invited reflection. They found the familiar wooden bench overlooking the water and quietly sat down. Instead of searching for answers, they simply appreciated being present. Because your heart needs this right now, because some of life's greatest blessings are discovered when we stop rushing. Nearby, an elderly craftsman carefully repaired an old wooden fence surrounding the community garden. A young child watched curiously. "Why don't you replace it with something new?" the child asked. The craftsman smiled kindly. Because strong things deserve restoration. They don't always need replacement. Those simple words echoed deeply. Relationships often work the same way. Misunderstandings happen. Mistakes happen. Distance sometimes grows. Yet patience, honesty, forgiveness, and compassion can restore what once seemed broken. Because your heart needs this right now, because healing often begins when people choose restoration instead of giving up. The afternoon quietly unfolded. Golden sunlight reflected across the lake. A father patiently helped his daughter learn to ride her bicycle. Every time she lost balance, he smiled. "You didn't fail. You learned." She laughed and tried again. Watching them reminded them that healthy relationships become places where people feel safe enough to grow. Not places where perfection is expected, but places where encouragement is freely given. Because your heart needs this right now, because encouragement often changes lives more than criticism ever could. Later they wandered through the familiar flower garden. Rows of colorful roses stretched beneath the afternoon sun. An elderly gardener carefully watered every flower. Curious, they asked, "Do flowers ever bloom exactly the same way?" The gardener smiled warmly. "No. But every flower deserves patience." Those words quietly settled into their heart. People bloom differently too. Some heal quickly. Others slowly. Some speak easily. Others need time. Love respects those differences. Because your heart needs this right now, because understanding grows wherever patience is practiced. Returning to the bench one final time, they opened the notebook. Across the last blank page they slowly wrote, "Today I release fear. I release unnecessary worry. I release the need to appear perfect. Instead, I choose honesty. I choose kindness. I choose forgiveness. I choose gratitude. I choose hope." Reading those words brought tears to their eyes. Not tears of sadness. Tears of freedom. Because they finally understood that pretending had been far heavier than telling the truth. Because your heart needs this right now, because freedom often begins where authenticity begins. As afternoon slowly became evening, golden sunlight painted the sky with beautiful shades of orange, pink, and violet. Families packed picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Birds returned to their nests. Everything gradually became quiet. Standing beside the peaceful lake, they reflected on the title of this story. Your married soulmate's biggest secret is about to be exposed. A gentle smile crossed their face. The greatest secret had never been a dramatic revelation. It wasn't hidden betrayal. It wasn't a sensational mystery. The real secret was how many people quietly carry fears they believe no one will understand. The greatest breakthrough came when someone chose openness instead of hiding. Because your heart needs this right now, because honest hearts create deeper connections than perfect appearances ever can. As evening settled across the neighborhood, they returned home. The room felt peaceful. Outside, countless stars slowly appeared across the night sky. The notebook rested quietly on the table. Opening it one final time, they carefully wrote, "If this journey has taught me anything, it is this. Never assume the people you love already know how much they matter. Tell them. Never wait for a perfect moment to apologize. Begin today. Never believe vulnerability is weakness. It is often the birthplace of trust. Never underestimate the quiet power of kindness. Small acts of compassion often become the strongest memories." They paused before writing one final reflection. Whether tomorrow brings restored relationships, unexpected opportunities, difficult conversations, or simply another peaceful sunrise, I choose to move forward with honesty, humility, compassion, gratitude, forgiveness, and hope. Those values may not remove every challenge, but they will guide every step I take and help me build relationships rooted in trust, respect, and genuine love. They gently closed the notebook. The journey had reached its final page. Outside, the stars continued shining. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New opportunities would come. New conversations would begin. New lessons would quietly unfold. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared what the truth might reveal. Because they had discovered the greatest truth of all. The strongest relationships are not built on hidden secrets, dramatic revelations, or perfect people. They are built through everyday honesty, patient listening, mutual respect, forgiveness freely given, gratitude openly expressed, and the quiet courage to choose love over fear, one ordinary day at a time. The room became still. The stars filled the night sky. With a peaceful smile, they turned off the light, knowing that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it with integrity, compassion, and hope.